in my teenage years and even as a kid, and I had a very romantic view of these early 1900s explorers, the people who went where no one had ever not gone before. In the very same manner that people map out these continents, I started to map out the body.
The purpose of training is developing the body. The body is what creates everything and what causes everything. If you focus on the external thing, then you are missing the main purpose of your training. You're focusing on like figments of your imagination and imagination of everyone else. You're focusing on the indicators of success, indicators of good movement, strength. All of these just indicate you have athleticism. It does not mean it's the same thing.
You start from this very imperfect place where everything is lacking, connection lost, you don't know what's going on. At some point comes this point where it's like zap, different areas in your body just start to like these lights, blink, 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 that starts to light up in there. And you start to get a really good sensation and a feeling in your body. And that is an amazing feeling. Once you got that, it's not gonna go away. So if people were to ask me, like, how have I gotten all these physical abilities and attributes, and how have I built the body that I have now, all these movement abilities and everything? So I think many people would like expect an answer to be like, well, I did this 5 different or 10 different exercises, X amount of reps and sets. I did them 4 times a week. I did them for this amount of time and just keep going and never give up. And that is how I got my results. And I know this is for many people, like they just expect there to be this very clear routine. And while there is truth to that, like I've followed certain routines, it's a bit more complex also than that. Because there was a point in my training journey where I realized that this kind of approach is so overly simplistic and it does not really relate with the nature of the body, with the reality of the body, this kind of simplistic approach, just going through these sets and mechanically repeating the same old exercises year after year. And actually what I came to realize is that at some point, every person in their lives should have pretty much every corner of their body explored. Like there should be no sort of dark areas in there anymore. Like you should be very familiar with every single area and muscle in your body. And you can think of it in this way, like if you have a kind of a world map, you have this globe and you have the different continents there. You know, at some point people didn't even really know where the continents were, but at some point, you know, they did their explorations with the ships and they figured out like here's like America, South America, you have the Africa, you have the Southeast Asia, and this whole thing was gonna start to be mapped out. But even so, you know, there were still these dark areas that no one really knew what was in there. If we go back like a few centuries, people had no idea like what was in the middle of Congo like rainforest. So, and you have to understand that you can, even if you end up, you know, into middle of America, it's not like you know the entire America. You just are at the center. You need to go to the north, to the south, to the east, to the west, and to the south west, and you have to go through every single of these directions of the compass to explore that area. And now you start to really map out it. You start to see this country and this continent, like what is actually in there, and how is everything playing together. So you're mapping out these territories, unexplored territories. And the funny thing about this is that when I was in my teenage years, and even as a kid, I was kind of admiring and I had a very romantic view of these early like 1900s or 1800s explorers. I was reading this book about people who explored the rainforest, the Nile River, the people who went where no one had ever gone before. And my life, you know, turned out interesting that I did start to travel myself all over the world. But the biggest exploration that I ever ended up doing was inside to the body, like within the body, like to the muscles, to the joints, to the performance of the body and to the health of the body. And in the very same manner that people map out these continents, I started to map out the body. I started to map out these different articulations, every single area, every possibility, because people don't understand. Like I mentioned, you go to this continent, you're in the middle of there, you still need to do a lot of exploration to get it. Same way people do one exercise for the shoulder and they think now they've like explored the entire thing, but you have so many different fibers, so many different possibilities of combinations of where to put it and train it there. And this, I think this is what me and Samuli have done for many years now. We've just been mapping out the body and its possibilities.
Yeah, actually, if I want to give like a timeline of everything, for us, it really started to change somewhere around 2015 when we were still living in Finland. And interestingly, after that, we started traveling. We actually traveled for 3-4 years in different parts of the world, mostly in Asia and the Oceania, like Australia and different Asian countries, but also in Europe. But the beginning was really the 2015 when we really started to look every part and every aspect of our human bodies. Like for example, personally, before that we were like kind of like doing the right things, but we also were doing lots of like the bad stuff, and also like the methods were kind of, you know, they were like mostly good, but with lots of, you know, holes in them. And because of these holes, our bodies developed lots of different problems, like injuries, not like actual which required like surgery or anything like this, but we got like lots of pains, lots of aches, and lots of like kind of like actually like chronic injuries. Like I had many different injuries. Like I hurt my rib cage very badly doing like weighted dips. I basically broke both of my elbows, and also had some problems with my shoulder and spine and back and everything. Like nowadays I have absolutely no injuries at all and no pain anywhere in the body. I'm actually feeling amazing. But due to these injuries, like these injuries were kind of the wake-up call for us, because we had to find like a way to make progress and also a way to really heal the body and restore the body like to the how it used to be when there was no pain and no restrictions. So for example, both of my elbows were like in really bad shape. I couldn't do pull-ups, I couldn't even bunch, like I couldn't even do things I wanted to do. And all of this was because the training methods I initially followed over 10 years ago were too restrictive, too simplistic, and too repetitive in terms of like certain exercise. Like I was just doing too many chin-ups and too many pull-ups. And as a result, I developed like really bad chronic elbow pain. And the solution was to really go through the whole body. But in case of elbows, the solution was to go through the shoulders, the forearms, and the arms. Like I trained every part of my arm. Like I developed every part of my forearm, and I developed every part of my biceps, and I also work on every part of my triceps. Like I used like maybe like dozens of different exercises just to develop the arms, just to, you know, go through every single articulation, every single angle, every single fiber I could find. And I utilized so many different exercises to do it, because you have to do it, because there's no one exercise that kind of magically trains everything. But after that, like that was what really helped with my elbow pain, and there's no pain nowadays at all.
Yeah, like people would think often like 10 exercises is a lot, or 20 exercises is a lot, or something like 30 exercises. But if we talk about our exercise and what we've been done, like it's in the hundreds, maybe even the thousands, because it's hard to even count it like what is an exercise. But if you choose, like let's say, you know, there's so many different articulations. Just as an example, like first you need to become knowledgeable of the different joints. As an example, shoulder, because I had an impingement in my shoulder at a certain point. Like this, like Samuli had pains, I had multiple in the hips, was like, it was like a messed up. I couldn't do squats without pain. My back was hurting, lower back, center back, the middle back. I had like a lot of issues in the shoulder area, as I mentioned, and it was impinging when I was doing push-ups or even trying to do pull-up. I could not do anymore. It was a big shock, because I was like, I'm powerful, I can do muscle-ups, I can do these handstand push-ups, and suddenly it's all taken away because it's just like pinching, and it's just like hurting And I'm like wondering what happened. It was like the reality kind of broke in, because I was sold this idea, or I was kind of programmed to believe, and even I think Samuli was programmed to believe that the highest level is this kind of like aesthetic muscular body, which is able to lift a lot of weights and do very impressive skills like front levers, back levers, and whatnot, muscle ups, all these gymnastic skills. But then the reality hit in, and suddenly like you wake up, there's small tightnesses that has been there all the time, and now they just start to get worse and worse, and you just keep repeating the same stuff. You just keep repeating the same exercises. You wonder like, what is going on? And regards to my shoulder, like I had to how do you say, deconstruct the entire area to its pieces. Like you need to separate. First of all, okay, you have the shoulder blade. This is just an example. You have a shoulder blade. You need to recognize all the possible different movements from it, different rotations, the retractions, protractions, and so on. Then you need to separate your deltoid area, which is a completely separate entity in a way through the regards to the movement. And then you have the different rotations of the shoulders. You have the different like spatial positions, and then you have different rotations. And all of those scapular positions, deltoid positions, the rotational positions, they can be combined. And there's a whole lot of combinations for you to cover, to go through. And so you go through those different angles, those different combinations to figure not all of them necessarily are even what you need, because there's certain standard exercises everyone is doing, like external rotation or something. But you have to understand that the like people talk about corrective exercises. Correct bicep curl done properly can be a corrective exercise. A lateral raise, which every bodybuilder is doing, can be a corrective exercise if you do it properly. Just the problem is that people don't do it correctly. External rotation is no more therapeutic than a front raise if you do it properly. And so, like someone explained, for example, the solution, you start to really explore it. You cannot take these ready-made routines necessarily, because they don't always work. They're not necessarily even about your body, and they're prescribed for someone else's issues and injuries that they have and their weaknesses. So you need to do a lot of exploration, and only by going through all of these things, you start to, like I said, you start to map out these different possibilities. You start to map out which muscle affects which function of the shoulder, which muscle might have the weakness that is causing the pain in your shoulder or in your rotator cuff or some impingement. You start to figure out not just the muscles, but the functionality. For example, the stability. Are you lacking the positional stability in your shoulder? So there's so many things to consider, and maybe perhaps this makes it more like clear to us, why are there so many things that we've gone through? Why is it not confined in just like few different exercises? Because the body is not like that. This is what I think we've been led to believe, that the body works optimally when you're doing your back squats and your deadlifts and your maybe split squat and some hamstring knee flexion or knee extension. Like
Nordic curl.
Yeah, Nordic curls. Like this is not the reality of the body at all. You have to understand this is conditioned. This comes with the fitness culture, and it is spread by people who probably mean good. And there are benefits to all of this exercise, even basic and everything, but that is not all there is to the human body. And this is what we've been figuring out.
Yeah, I remember the times when we were in Croatia or in Australia, like Eero was doing like all these different exercises until midnight. And the same here, like I was doing very weird like shoulder articulation, like this, like for hundreds of reps, like in midnight, like just trying to find some painful parts or like uncomfortable areas in my body, because many times the pain and the discomfort is a sign. It's a sign of weakness. And and in the past we have talked about many times that weakness is actually not a bad thing. Weakness is actually strength in disguise and potential in disguise, because when you fix the weakness, when you solve the weakness, then you actually have strength, and that's why it's very important. But this whole thing about going through the body, developing self-awareness, developing body-mind connection, like these are all like the essence and the pillars of our methods nowadays. Like Movement 20XX method it's fundamentally about versatility, and in the heart of this program and in this method is the variability method, and which is all about having lots of creativity, lots of options, and lots of different movements and movement patterns, joint articulations, and all of this. So it already covers like a lot. But then in Athlete 20XX method, we focus more on the self-awareness and the body-mind connection, and giving you the power and the understanding and the realization that you can actually do through your mind, you can control your body, you can develop your body, and you can find weaknesses, fix the weaknesses, and become strong as a result, which is completely the opposite in comparison to the fitness industry, which is because I used to be part of the mainstream methods, and it's all about focusing on your strengths actually, and it's all about focusing on the simplistic exercises, like, because my training, the reason I developed so many problems in my body and in my joints is because I overdid like 10 different exercises, which was not enough. Like I was just doing chin-ups and chin-ups and chin-ups like over and over again, like 3 times per week or 4 times per week or something like this. And then I was doing deadlifts and back squats and just repeating it over and over again. And it didn't get me anywhere actually. It gave me certain things in superficial terms like muscle and such, but it was everything else was mostly for the ego. Like I felt strong, but I didn't feel strong, but I looked strong on paper when it came to my lifts and my abilities, but I just didn't have real athleticism and my whole body was hurting.
Yeah, that's a good point. Like on paper, like it's always like this ideal idea that you have and you see these people, but you don't really know what they're going through. Like you see the calisthenic guys and they also, so a lot of them looks absolutely impressive. They can do impressive stuff, but you don't really know what is even going on like behind the curtains. And a lot of them even came out with some injuries, like their elbows, like completely destroyed, biceps torn, shoulder, rotator cuff, you name it. Like, and then you don't even know in what shape their hips and legs are because they don't necessarily emphasize them a lot. And usually it's very simplistic training for that as well. But, you mentioned like, the movement training that you see me do a lot, these animal movements, the flowing, and different martial arts movements, dance movements, and then the athletic precision training, which is like isolation taken to the highest level through the integration of the body, and then even like conditioning type of training. And this also is a big part of this this training, because first I talk about this articulational like variety. So you can train your shoulder from so many different angles, from so many different combinations. That's one thing. But what adds even more to that is that you can train one articulation. You can do your front raise, and you can do it in a very controlled manner, slow movements. You can train it in an explosive manner. You can train end range. You can stretch out the anterior deltoid all the way back here. You can do some skin to scat or some better, like less intense exercises where you're stretching and strengthening the shoulder. So you have active flexibility, you have active tension, mobility methods for movement 20XX. You have normal controlled movements that are more like Athlete 20XX type of training. Then you have the explosive training that you also run in Athlete 20XX. So not only do you have all of these different articulations that you can train, but you can do all of those in a different manner, and that changes also the results. People don't understand. They think like, well, I've already done the exercise. I've done it so many times. It doesn't bring me benefits. But question is, how have you done the exercise? Because my question that I often ask from people is, if you haven't done an exercise consciously, have you done it at all? Like that's like you can ask that from yourself. If you haven't done an exercise consciously, have you done an exercise at all? Because putting the consciousness into an exercise and the power of the mind, like you mentioned, that you realize that you have this power, it changes everything. It changes the exercise completely. And I've experienced this so vividly many times in my training journey. We started from Finland. I did some exercises during that time like already I was so like Samuli said, you know, like midnight training and just doing stuff. I was so passionate about mapping this body, but I didn't have the methodology that we have now, because we developed that also over the year. Like in like Croatia to Australia, we developed the Athlete to Next method, which was this consciousness. That was the consciousness, the body awareness. That is when it really was awakened in ourselves. And it changed everything, because now I started to do same exercise that I did years ago. And I was like, this is totally different. Suddenly these exercises start to produce completely different results. The intention is there. The connection to my body is there. And I was like, have I even really, like, what was I doing back in the day? Like even pull-ups, regular chin-ups or something, they felt, every exercise that I was doing felt totally different. So you have to understand really that there is the, if you go on a horizontal plane, there's a huge variety of exercises. And like I explained, you can do the movement stuff, you can do more like isolation, bodybuilding stuff, you can do conditioning stuff. So you have this horizontal plane, a lot of variety. But within that, you can, in each of these things, you can also go not just in the horizontal level, but you can go in a vertical level, deep, deep, deep. And that's all dependent on the, let's say, the approach and the methodology that you have. It's all dependent on your body awareness and consciousness. But the bottom line is that people should realize that we have this power to use our mind. And people, you know, centuries ago, or at least a century ago, actually a million ago, if you think about Qigong, Asian Qigong and such, people realized the power of the mind intent, or the E. And that is also what we are carrying even into our training, this same power, and it's very transformative.
Yeah, I would say, like, if you're like a serious trainer or serious fitness enthusiast, like I would say almost most of the serious guys, their bodies are like kind of in a bad shape. Like they have lots of injuries, they have lots of pains, they have lots of aches, because we used to have the same problems also. But what people cannot even fathom, what they cannot even realize, is that there's a way and there's a possibility that you can have everything you have ever wanted with no pain. But most people are on this left side, where they get these things, a lot of things they want and desire, but it comes with lots of sacrifices. When in reality, like the smart way and the real, like the most respectful way for yourself is to actually achieve and get results without sacrificing anything. Like there's no, like, in the past, I remember lots of professional guys and lots of serious guys in lifting and sports and athletics. They always talk about, yeah, it's a sacrifice, like you have to give something up to get this and like this. And a lot of these guys, they had like many knee surgeries, many shoulder surgeries and stuff like this. And they were just talking, yeah, it's part of the game. There's no way around it if you want to have this highest level. But now look at, for example, Eero. Like there's not many individuals at the same capabilities and the same fitness and the same movement as Eero. And Eero doesn't have any of these same problems. And I'm also doing very good training with Eero and other professional fighters and guys, and I don't have any of these problems either. Like so we have to realize that it is possible to have whatever you want, but without having the pain as a part of the plan. And one of the keys to actually eliminating pain is actually like uncovering the entire map of your body and developing self-awareness, because lots of people, when they have injuries, they think there's like a magical exercise. They go to like physiotherapist and they just give me one exercise, or give me this one injection, or give me this one surgery, and it's fixed. But even this one exercise is never going to fix it. Most likely it can help, but very likely it's not going to help in the long run. And another thing is that the injection is probably going to fix it for 1 month or 1 year or so on. And even the surgery may not fix it forever, because your main training is causing the problem, and it's always going to repeat as long as you do the same thing over and over again. You put some bandages over the wound, but it just keeps opening up because you keep doing the same mistakes over and over again. And like I said, how I fixed my elbows and fixed how Eero fixed his shoulder and every other joints was to focus on the structural balance of the body, go through every single area in that part of the body, and just develop strength, mobility, stability, and all of these other attributes in the muscles in a balanced way in every part of the limb. For example, I really had to go through every single part of my arm to really make sure it's bulletproof and it's rock solid, and developing mobility in the entire range of motion and stability is one of the keys to like ensure like your body stays bulletproof. But it's also very important to have the self-awareness and the mind-body connection to keep the body in the safe frame, in the safe lines where you don't like overreach to any place where you might get injured or where you might get like hurt.
Yeah, it takes actually, and that's part of the body awareness and even the process. Like you initially, like you have to understand, for example, I did not have a good connection to my body when I began. I had a very good intuition that I should be able to feel these things. Like when I started to do like even in Finland and 2015 and even before that, just I went to the gym and I'm like, okay, I want to feel my muscles. If I train my lats, I want to feel my lats. If I train my chest, I'm going to try to feel my chest. That should make intuitive sense. But during that time, the sense itself was not developed. Like I was not able to accurately, let's say like, or clearly sense what was going on in my body. I could not make the judgments like, okay, now I'm doing a good exercise, or now I'm not doing. So the process is that you have to start from this place where you're completely like lost. You have these dark areas and don't be afraid of them. Like you need to have this explorer spirit, because now what people want to do, they want to know everything immediately, and then they believe these guys who say do this and that, and in the end you will not end up knowing almost anything. So you need to, of course, you take advice even from us, you can take advice from other people, but you need to always make the final exploration in your own body and understand that the skill of training, this training itself is a craft. And this is what me and Samuli have treated training. Like people think skill is this, you do your handstand, but the training itself is a skill. Going into your body is a high level skill that I'm teaching. And if you're a coach or someone, you should have this skill in your repertoire. Like you need to know exactly like how to train your body and how to sense your posture, your muscles getting developed in your body. But so the process is you start from this very imperfect place where everything is lacking, everything is kind of like connection lost, you don't know what's going on. And then like Matthew was one of my students, he explained like at some point comes this point where like it's like zap, the muscles are turned online, your different areas in your body just start to like, there's like these lights, bling, 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 that starts to light up in there. And you start to get a really good sensation and a feeling in your body. And that is an amazing feeling, because it's like, and it's there. Once you got that, it's not going to go away. Every training session onwards from that point, if you have the correct direction, this kind of ability will get reinforced. And I went like in Croatia, every time I went to the gym, every single time I'm putting my mind to it. And many times I was like, I'm just not getting this feeling. Like I don't have the connection. Like I was like, where is it? But you have to trust the process. You just have to do your repetitions and always aim to do them in a more mindful manner. Aim to improve your control. Like Samuli mentioned, also stability is one of the most important things that was lacking from me. I was not able to connect to my body because I didn't have stability. I didn't know how to stabilize the body. So a lot of areas I was unable to activate because I was compensating because of lack of stability in my body, for example, the shoulder blades. So finding out these ways to go deeper into the body is really essential in this approach, and trusting the process and understanding that it is something that you have to do in the long term, and it's something that you cannot skip, and it's something you cannot just read from a book. The art of the body and the science of the training has to be lived through and experienced.
Like how people see now, for example, how Eero moves and how I move, like people see this movement quality. They see like it's very beautiful, graceful movement. But I remember 10 years ago when Eero was doing deadlifts and squats, they were not very good. They were crooked. Like they were like going up like a
shaking.
Yeah, shaking.
Trembling.
Yeah, and it was not smooth, and it was not graceful, and it was not didn't have good movement quality at all. But all of these abilities you see now Eero doing on videos and stuff, like it's a result of proper training, dedicated training, and consistent training for a decade. But nothing was natural like this. It's a result of following this certain path and certain journey and certain way of developing the body. But I was very different in terms of mentality, because in the beginning I didn't have any body awareness either, and for me it was all about the numbers. It was all about the ego. It was all about the skill. It was all about how much I could lift. Like I didn't even care about so much about the deadlift form or anything. I just wanted to get the weight up. It didn't matter like how I did it, as long as it just went up. And the same went with chin-ups. Like of course I had the criteria so people wouldn't say like it's not proper form, but the criteria was very limited. It was like you just used full range of motion and that's it. Like just start from straight arms in a chin-up and pull yourself up until your chest, until your chin is above the bar, and that's it. And with the deadlift, just lift the weight up. Like these were the criteria, and it's super simplistic, because there's so much more to training and so much more to develop in the body, because training is indeed, it's a craft, it's an art form, and it's something, it's an art form of developing the body, of sensing the body. And in the past when I was training, I was so focused on the external criteria that I didn't even consider the body so much. Like I was doing countless mobility exercises and stuff, but only because I thought these were going to prevent injuries and keep the body safe. But I was obsessed about all of these external numbers, external criteria, and actually what I was obsessed with was like other people's opinion of me, because all of these external standards, they come from outside, they come from the industry, they come from the people, because it was like a way of gaining respect from others and gaining self-respect also. But after I gave all of this up, because it didn't even matter, because it doesn't actually even matter, and instead I started focusing more on the body, because the purpose of training is developing the body. Like the purpose of everything is the body. Like the body is what creates everything and what causes everything. Like the purpose, like if you focus on the external thing, then you are missing the main purpose of your training. You are not focusing on the essence of what it's all about. You're focusing on some like figments of your imagination and imagination of everyone else. You're not focusing on the thing that actually where everything comes from. You are not focusing on the source of your results. You are focusing on like, it's like you're focusing on the indicators of success. You're focusing on the indicators of good movement. You're focusing on the indicators of strength. You're focusing on the indicators. Like all of these just indicate you have athleticism and you have capability and you have like a really strong athletic body, but it does not mean it's the same thing, because the big wake-up call for me was that because I was doing chin-ups with extra, like my personal record was like 60 kilos 120 pounds. And I was also doing deadlifts for over twice my body weight. And I don't remember the back squats, but I was doing front squats with, I think, with my body weight also, which for front squat is better than for the back squat. And I was doing all of these different skills and different exercises, and I was doing ring push-ups with like extra 35 weighted vest. Like I was wearing 30 kilo, like 60 pounds weighted vest, and then I had like plate 5 kilo, 10 pounds plate inside the vest, and I was doing full range of motion, like ring push-ups, and I have video and proof of all of this. And still I had all of these numbers, but it didn't transfer to athleticism and martial arts. Like it had very little transfer. Of course, it's a lot better in comparison to, let's say, like somebody who's sedentary and doesn't move and doesn't exercise and doesn't only sits in front of computer and doesn't do anything. Of course, I was much better than him, but in comparing to other athletes who maybe were not strong in these lifts at all, they like the athletes who had like some physical movement background, they were like 10 times better in everything, and they maybe couldn't even do weighted push-ups at all. They couldn't do weighted chin-ups. They barely could do 5 chin-ups, but they were, because they were more well-rounded, more holistic, and more actually functional. They were like 10 times an athlete as I was in the past. But on paper, I should have been the better athlete because I had the lifts, I had the skills. But if we were to compete, if we were to do martial arts, if we were to do anything actually functional, actually athletic, I would have lost every time to someone who just played football for like 5 years as a kid and didn't do barely any exercise. Like I would have lost to this guy despite having spent years in the weight room.
Yep. And would you talk about, that you let go of this, like you managed to like get rid of this validation, because that's what it mainly was for. It wasn't for the real athleticism. It was because it is kind of respected in the culture that you're at, like in these forums and these videos and these other guys. So you kind of go into it, but like, and this for me is like that there is an actual like a sacrifice, and that sacrifice is sacrificing your ego, because the ego is the one that is kind of wants that validation. It wants to just show off. It wants to look like strong, and it doesn't really care if it really is strong, but it gets, you get all the happiness from people thinking you are strong, people thinking that you have something. And, you could live your whole life like this way, in this happy bubble where you never test yourself, in this sport or anything. And I feel like most people don't. And if they do, like, what happens is they're like, well, I'm not gonna even try it. Like it doesn't work so well, but you don't really face the reality of yourself, even though you face these adversities. And like you go try some sport and okay, your knee is hurting. Well, maybe this is not for me and it's not so good anyway. Like you just maybe make these excuses and just accept your situation. And even before you talk about like people in this culture, they accept the pain and they think that's part of it. And I think this is the big problem, and this is the problem of the ego. Like for me, this was the same thing. I was so hugely and so strongly stuck in these feats of strength. Like that was the image that I had built up over years. And like Samuli, we invested a lot of time and training hours into being able to lift this weight, being able to do pull-ups with 50 kilos or something, being able to do muscle up with like 25 or 30 kilo. And that was the life. And then you want to hold on to that because that is all you have actually. And there's nothing, if you take those away, there's nothing, broken body that cannot handle sports or like athletic movements or martial arts. And that is what left there. But this sacrifice, I remember very well this moment that I had, and this was in Croatia where I made like the final decision. Like I made this decision, okay, like it was literally like kind of like late at night, like dark room. I was doing some training and like I'm willing to like lose it all. Like I'm gonna, the muscle, the weight, whatever. Like it cannot be more important than the health, the long-term health and of my body and the good feeling that I can have in my body. Now, the sacrifice, of course, it was more of a sacrifice of the idea of the strength. I wasn't really sacrificing like my athleticism. I was doing the opposite. Like this is where it started to build up the abilities that I have now to the point where I can really do all this stuff, don't feel pain, I can just go full forward. And I have this intuition and this awareness of my body and this trust. I have this trust in my body and this ability to do all sorts of training, whatever training I want to do. And this is like the beginning point there. But initially I made a huge sacrifice in my mind that all this weight stuff, all this ego stuff, all this validation, it has to be gone. Like this, there's something that is more important than this thing that has been fed to me that I believe to be true, because every cell in my body was like yelling, this is not the way to go. Like this can't be the way to go. And I just decided to trust that intuition, trust that feeling, and take on the journey and go fully into it. And this is where we ended up from that.
Yeah, I would say that in all aspects of life, not just in training, there's a big difference between being the real deal, being the real, and versus being the like an imposter, being the fake. Like for example, in Dubai, there are lots of people who are kind of pretending to be successful. Like they wear like fake watches, they wear like fake brands, and they pretend to be like, yeah, I'm this rich, successful guy. But in reality, like it's not the case at all. It's like all fake. And the same if you go some, let's say, bodybuilding gyms, you see lots of people, they think they're strong, they think they're athletic, but they almost, because they use so much steroids and their training is so non-functional, that they actually have negative athleticism. Like it's worse than the average person in many cases. Yes. Really, yeah. But it's the same. It's like, but these people, people who don't really understand it very well, they think, okay, this guy is massive, this guy has massive muscles, he must be really strong and really athletic. But that's not the case. He actually would lose to like very small BJJ guys, he would lose to very small boxers, he would lose many very small football players in many aspects of fitness. And the same goes with the other pretenders who pretend to be the real deal, but they're not. But like you said, like Eero said, like the ego gets this almost the same validation, whether it actually gets more validation with the fake. Yeah, it gets a lot more validation with the fake stuff. If you are actually like have the bodybuilding look, you will actually from the regular people, you actually get lots of more admiration and respect and validation compared to the real deal who could be like just look like a average fit guy, or who could. Some people, they don't even look so like without like a shirt on, they don't even look very strong, but they could be like insanely strong, insanely athletic, and insanely capable. And the same with, you know, all these pretenders. Like you don't know, like there are lots of rich people who don't show up at all, and they don't get any of the same attention.
I never actually thought about it, that if you go to this, or you kind of feed the ego, like that's what really gets you, it gets you the attention. That is specifically for what it's for, and you get even a massive amount of it. Because for every regular person, like you said, if you see this bodybuilder, it is hugely impressive. For us, this changed, because yes, if you see a bodybuilder, like, whoa, that's a huge guy. But before it used to be like, I want to be like that, like that's good. But now it's more like these guys who can't scratch their backs, and if they move, like their whole body moves in one chunk. Like
and they get tired of like going upstairs.
Yeah.
Like now when we see some of these guys, it's like you immediately can say, okay, this guy is not dangerous at all. Like this guy is not athletic at all. Like this guy has negative athleticism and negative fighting ability many times.
Yep. That's the thing. Like your perception of the body changes, and your perception of your own body changes. Because for me, now when I'm look at my own body, I don't only look at like how big am I. I look at also how am I really feeling inside of my body. Like that's the most important thing, because we've talked about this even before. Like if you have pains, you know, your confidence is very low actually. And I can't believe these guys who still like they walk like they're, you know, on top of the world, but at the same time, you know, you don't know really what's going on in there.
And the same goes for many traditional martial artists as well. They walk like they have the confidence, but it's, you know, it's just because you are like a black belt or really high level master in your traditional martial art, which is may not be even like practical or even effective. It doesn't actually mean anything when it comes to real fighting and real self-defense.
I think one of the big parts from this is what we talk about, like, you know, sacrifice the ego and getting rid of this stuff is, you know, and I think Samuli maybe touched on this subject is this weakness. Like, yeah, you mentioned like we see weakness as potential in disguise. Like, and people talk about nowadays, it's very almost like a trendy to talk about vulnerability, like men should be vulnerable and this way. And like, I get this, but there's also the vulnerability aspect in the physical sense that if you face weaknesses, this is what you will feel. You will feel very vulnerable because suddenly you become so conscious of all the weakness that you have in a body that you maybe didn't want to even face. Like, it's a big thing, like if you at some point experience this sort of wake up, like I explained, you know, you're big, you can do this and you can do that, and at the same time you have to accept the reality that you are not very functional, and if you would try to do something athletic, you know, you probably wouldn't do very well in it. So this ability to sacrifice the ego, face the weaknesses, very like deeply go into them, like literally face weaknesses, even feel them in your body, and like specifically go and train them over and over time, and feeling it, like going through it. Like, this is not like some body part, like my hip, for example, when I had a pinchment and pain in my hip, and I couldn't like really do high kicks or anything. Like, I had to just repeatedly go on it. I had to find like separate, like try to locate these areas in my hip, these different articulations in the flexion or extensor, and combine that with different hip rotations. And I was trying to find which muscles are not functioning here in my hip, different stretching drills as well. You have to be able to be very present in these moments. Like, you cannot run away. I think this is one of the starting point from all these problems, is that you run away from your weaknesses, you run away from feeling vulnerable, and you run away straight into the big hug of your ego that always, you know, is there ready to catch you. But that's...
Yeah, I would say that the main lesson here is that forget about what other people think and become the real deal. Don't fake it. Don't be the fake guy, whatever, in anything, any area of life, and just focus on becoming the real deal. And actually, when you focus on the becoming the real deal, it kind of eventually you will get also, because at the top, the real deal are the only ones who survive, but only at the lower levels, it's more about, you know, faking it. But the lesson here is that just don't prioritize like the ego and other people's opinions of you, and instead focus on yourself, focus on your body, and focus on becoming the real deal in all aspects of life, especially when it comes to body.
Like, be willing to humble yourself for a moment, and you shall be like raised, because that's in a way it is. You have to go to your core self.
Like in the Bible, it says like the humble will be exalted.
Yes, that's exactly what it is. And if you cannot humble yourself and go to your own true level, where you can only start to really build yourself up, you will never really build yourself. You're only building image. You're only building a bubble of yourself, which just like pops, and it's all gone. And then there's what is only left is the real core self of you that you never really built up. You never developed that. So all I'm saying is, initially, you know, even though you feel like it's very small, like it's very weak, like your core self, you feel like it's very weak compared to this big ego and this validation that you're getting, that core self will start to grow, and it will grow extremely strong. You just need to go to it. Like Samuli said, don't fake it. It's better to be like broke and be real than to be fake and, you know, like rich or something like that. Like just be yourself, you know, start from where you are and focus on your core self. Like it feels very good. And that is what people can also sense.